The information contained in this video is strictly for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, legal, or other professional advice and is not a substitute for consultation with a qualified professional. The opinions expressed in the show do not necessarily reflect the views of the Center for Continuing Education and Workforce Development, Borough of Manhattan Community College, and the City University of New York. State of Mind is a web-based discussion program that explores the relevant social, economic, and political issues that are prominent at the post-secondary level of education. State of Mind is sponsored by the Center for Continuing Education and Workforce Development at the Borough of Manhattan Community College. BMCC. Start here, go anywhere. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Krishna C. Nadella, and this is State of Mind. Wrapping up our Under Pressure series, today's topic is about blueprints for success. It is commonly said that success breeds success. That is, once a proper blueprint is in place, others may follow and build upon it, thus strengthening an already successful model. But what about when there is no blueprint in place? For many students across the country, they face this predicament firsthand as they are the first in their families to go to college. Without any prior knowledge to help guide them, they must navigate through the many important decisions that can have a long-lasting impact on their academic, professional, and even personal life. As such, it begs the question, if college is considered the practiced round for the real world, what is the winning formula for the game of life? Back with us a final time to help better understand the various perspectives on the following topics are the following guests. Dr. Rhea Almeida from the Institute for Family Services, Dr. Priscilla Rogers-Fahy from the BMCC Counseling Center, and Dr. Christian Brady from the Schreier Honors College at Penn State University. Dr. Almeida, Dr. Rogers-Fahy, Dr. Brady, thank you for joining me once again. Thank you. Dr. Brady, I'd like to start off with you. As the Dean of the Schreier Honors College, what is honors education?
So honors education in general is providing academic opportunities for excellent students to go even deeper and farther in their disciplines and helping them to learn how to create new knowledge as they go along. And specifically for the Schreier Honors College, we take a holistic approach. Our mission is to achieve academic excellence with integrity, build a global perspective, and create opportunities for leadership and civic engagement. So the idea is not only to challenge our students academically and provide them with the opportunities to thrive and succeed, but also to make sure we're developing them into whole people who will be ethical leaders.
What are the common backgrounds or characteristics you're seeing amongst the students that currently are in the honors program?
Well, I'm sort of already thinking through the challenges here, which is unfortunately the common background often is that they come from homes with a fairly substantial income, usually white. Honors education as a whole is not as diverse as we within the discipline would like, or the field, I should say. But in terms of those qualities, I think what you're talking about, and across all of our students, no matter what their ethnic or financial background is, they are people who are simply intelligent, that they're on some level, they really are smart. And that's the kind of thing that's not something that you can teach. But they also have discipline, and they have desire. So they have the latent intellectual ability, but then they also have the discipline to apply themselves and to move forward.
Excellent. So if success is a combination, as most believe, of nature and nurture, Dr. Almeida, where does family background play into all this, not just for academic success, but even professional and eventually personal success as well?
Right. I mean, I think family background, class background, all of those things mixed together really have a certain capital that people take with them. You know, we used to think that there was just sort of economic capital, but we now know there's cultural and social capital too. And so a lot of students who might end up in college don't have all of those, and just something simple like networking for a job, they might not know how to do it. And again, families, I think I said something about this earlier, that the building of those character strengths is really significant, I think, for success. So if kids are not raised with, given opportunities to sort of practice the self-control you were talking about, you know, that whole notion of grit, the idea of being compassionate towards others, learning from the emotional experience rather than being totally self-focused. I think all of that comes in a family home over many years. And so if kids are not prepared with that, they're sort of driven to perform academically, but there's very little social learning that really is the ultimate outcome of success.
Okay, so Dr. Rogers-Fahy, you have the unique perspective of being a therapist, but one who also works in an academic environment. What type of demographic do you see with the students that come into the counseling center? You know, one of the things that we've talked about in previous episodes is self-awareness, and that self-awareness usually will allow them to drive for success because they know what they want.
Right.
What's some of those themes that you've been seeing at the BMCC?
I definitely think that, you know, being the first in their family, they're sort of now struggling with being successful at a level where their parents can't seem to sort of understand, because it was sort of maybe their parents' dream. So your family can definitely lay the groundwork, but even for some of them who come from broken families and they are still trying to succeed because they have themselves the resilience and have recognized the importance of an education, they oftentimes have they have mentors in the community, they have really good family friends, maybe grandparents that have sort of raised them. There's religious leaders in the community, teachers from high school that are still like advocating for them to continue to move forward. You can do this. And then sometimes I even get a lot of older students who had come, maybe not done as well as they would have liked, and came back now because they themselves have small children and would like to further the family.
So it sounds like it's actually a lot more of a nurturing environment, because you may not necessarily have it within you to find that success. You may be first generation, you may not have the information available, but if you have the right pieces in place, whether it be mentorship, guidance counselors, and we've talked about some previous episodes, teachers, put in place to help provide that information, you can still find your way and navigate a blueprint that will allow you to get to where you want to go. Dean Brady, what type of model does the Shire Honors College look at while the student is in the academic environment to not necessarily tell them what success is, but to say whatever it is that you consider success, we'll provide you the framework to get there?
Well, you're actually fairly succinctly summarized it right there, which is we try to provide the framework and encouragement. I often use the term, and will apologize and say that this is a positive sense of enabling. We're not going to do things for the students. We're not going to go track them down and say, here, you should study abroad and here's some money to do it. We have travel grants. If you go find the program and you come and apply for the grant, we'll give it to you. And so we try and support them in that. We also try and send a clear message by every honors college and program has certain GPA requirements. Our bottom line is a 3.4, which is not terribly high. Many are 3.6 and 3.7. We do that because we want to tell the students here, success is not just about getting that perfect 4.0. We want you to develop holistically. We want you to study abroad. We want you to try other classes and other things. And we had a student graduate just a couple of years ago who was a physics major. His honors thesis was in music composition as a jazz musician. He's actually here in New York City making a living as a musician now. So we try and provide the encouraging framework, including that lower GPA as a bottom line requirement. Average graduating GPA is actually 3.85.
Wonderful.
So some of it is about the expectations, or excuse me, setting the requirements at one place, but then setting the opportunities and expectations much higher. So they don't feel the great loss you talked about in the previous episode, Krishna, having room to fail. We want to give them that room to stumble, make some wrong turns, but still say to them, well, but we expect you to continue to work hard. We expect you to continue to achieve.
Right. I feel like there's definitely a segue to the BMCC. You know, start here, go anywhere. Dr. Rogers-Fahy.
It's clever. It's so clever that Carolina Honors Program just started using it.
But that is really what the BMCC is all about, because we don't know where their career is going to end. We don't know how they're going to go after those 2 years. But is that really what you're seeing that resonates with the students, is that they have an idea, they have a vision, they come here, get a foundation in place, and then catapult from there?
Absolutely. Most of them are coming in now coming in saying, I want to go to a 4-year. This is my stop.
Right.
And then once they come here, you know, maybe this wasn't their first choice. Sometimes it's sort of like, well, it's cheaper. I might get some, you know, general education. I might try to find out what kind of student I am. And then once they're here, they don't want to leave.
Right.
They really have there's so many things to do here on campus, and there's so many ways that if you are looking for internships and volunteering and, you know, working on all sorts of different things, there's an opportunity for you to do it. Absolutely.
Excellent. So as a society, Dr. Almeida, do we do enough to identify high potential individuals? Doesn't have to be students per se, but people that have the potential to really achieve great things if we provide the right nurturing in place. Do we do enough of that?
I don't think we do enough of that, because what I was saying earlier is just taking, for example, the classrooms. Somebody called Prudence Carter, who writes a lot, has done a lot of research between South Africa and our schools post-apartheid, and she finds that with a lot of kids, you know, that separation in the cafeteria, those kids, like I said earlier, who may not have a lot of cultural and economic capital, there's no way in which the classroom actually uses that as a laboratory to bring those kids together with the high-functioning kids. And we do know that kind of integration actually does create positive outcomes for the kids that are sort of lagging behind. So I don't think we're there yet in terms of pulling in as much of the talent that's sort of on the periphery, because I think, as Dean Brady said earlier, most universities actually have the top performing students coming from high-class backgrounds, you know, whether it's single parent or not single parent, but there's class in the background that really has them prepared for success in ways that many other kids don't.
Right.
And I think that is the challenge. I mean, I mentioned that right up front to acknowledge this, that it's, we want to see as diverse, we would like our college demographics to reflect those of our society.
Right.
Yes,
Put it that way. We want to see those opportunities there. And unfortunately, they're not always there. I think there's another aspect, though, that I've been trying to sort of noodle on a little bit lately, which is, while the real problem is, of course, we don't have as much access for everyone that we would like, and there are unfortunately so many who don't have full access, and what they have access to is not of the quality as those with greater economic means. At the same time, we have this inflation of what honors is at every level, not just in college, but at high school and everything else. And so you end up with these sorts of circumstances where you've got honors is a significant portion of an academic unit, 25% of one group, for example. That, it's not a prestige thing in my mind, but it diminishes what an honors academic experience at a university ought to be, in the sense that not everybody's created equal intellectually. I don't consider myself the smartest person on this dais by any stretch of the imagination. You know, not everybody has the same intellectual faculty. When I was an undergraduate, I was not performing at the level that our students are. And so we have to do the job of recognizing, better job of recognizing where people truly are, finding those who they have the academic and intellectual potential, but are in physical circumstances and economic circumstances that aren't allowing them to get the access they need, elevating them, not to suggest that we're pushing other people down or away, but we're finding what is the right place for them. In another series, we talked about the importance of vocational schools. Not everybody needs a bachelor's degree, but our economy is saying, the job force, the people hiring our students are saying everybody's got to have a bachelor's degree. So that's something I really struggle with. You know, as dean of one of the best honors colleges in the nation, I recognize not everybody should be there, and I don't want those people who shouldn't be there to feel that they're second-class citizens or anything. They're not. They're just different people. So that's a tough balance, I think, to find.
And it actually thinks back to myself, anecdotally speaking. I remember growing up in grade school. It wasn't uncommon for the top students to be paired up with the low-performing students to try to produce a overall class that was all advancing in the right direction. I always saw the benefit for the low-performing students. You get to
Was it holding you behind?
Well, my question was, what is the benefit for the students that are high-performing to have that influence?
Well, I would like to take a stab at that.
Sure.
I mean, I think it is about that whole civic responsibility and shared responsibility. It does teach you the ability to be caring towards others, to sort of give to others. It's not just about taking for yourself, sort of trying to shatter that individual model. But it is about teaching you relationships, I think.
And just to give full closure, what I would absolutely agree is that it does teach you self-awareness. It tells it does teach you that, look, at the end of the day, success is not just on a GPA. Success is not just through a job opportunity. It's how you treat others, how you see yourself in society, and how you act amongst others as well. So, and I think that's where you really bring the two ends of the bell curve of life, so to speak. You get that happy medium in between.
But there is a potential challenge. If you only have a certain amount of time in a classroom, and you say, Krishna, you're doing so well, I want you to take time to work with Christian because he's not doing very well, and I want you to help him. There is an opportunity loss for you that you could potentially be learning more in that same time. By the same token, though, so I mean that's kind of a real negative way to approach it. but I think it is appropriate for students to help other students. So instead, Krishna, would you mind taking some time at recess or after school to work with Christian? Because he's just not, he's not reading very well.
Right.
And you're doing a great job. Would you help him? So I think that's, we do find sometimes because of pressures within classes that at primary and secondary that's the way schools are making ends meet effectively, because they don't have enough money for teachers or paras to help those students. But it can be at a cost of those high achieving students. But I think that some of the best development we see in our high achieving students is when they are helping others, not in a condescending, allow me to reach down. But hey, we're here together.
Right.
I mean, it has been shown to be one of the ancient healing methods is to really give back to other people and help other people in a community.
Right. And I have the feeling that the BMCC is very much catered to that as well, Dr. Rogers-Fahy. We see the ability for students from all backgrounds, from all demographics, from all experiences to come here and into a common ground and to feel equal amongst each other. And is that something that you see from a counseling standpoint as well, is that it doesn't really matter what, where you're coming from, you're all treated equal?
Absolutely, and I think they're all coming in with that. They all want to help each other. They're all sort of coming in from the same place, and they have a lot of commonalities amongst them. That's why we try to really focus on, why don't you join some groups if you are socially isolated? Why don't you try doing some volunteer work? You'll find out that you'll learn a lot about yourself in these ways. And it looks really good on your transcript.
Right.
Like, right, you're just always like, it doesn't hurt you. And to network, because you don't know how to network. You don't know how to talk to professors. I mean, some of the simple things that maybe we might take for granted are actually they're not the norm for some of our students.
Because they really come off, they're actually skills that need to be learned versus something that's innate that comes from within oneself.
Exactly.
Let's talk about gifted programs in this country. Are they still relevant in 2014? I mean, I'll leave my 2 cents out of this because you guys are the experts, but are they the best way to identify, talent and provide them a forum to really flourish?
Are you talking about at primary and secondary level?
Primary and secondary level.
I mean, it's not my area of expertise either.
Well, I have to say from a personal experience, we chose to leave our daughters in a public school system that did not do the gifted program. And the majority of those kids did really well, went to really good universities. Compared to the other school that had the gifted program, the kids that were gifted in the gifted track actually was sort of, there's a shroud of protection around them that kind of, in a weird kind of way, segregates kids, which I've always, just from a moral perspective, had trouble with.
So not so much the gifted track per se, unless you consider advanced placement AP classes as kind of a high school gift, which I suppose it is. I do think there are real problems there. And it's not so much a social or anything else, but it feeds into the credentialing mindset that I've got to get these things on my record. They're supposed to be college level, but just about any faculty member, especially in STEM, will tell you that it's not college level. So you asked at the top to define honors education. I was recently with some colleagues assessing an honors program at another university, and one individual there was saying, well, honors is about accelerated learning. No. Time out. Some of the students will be ahead, and so we want to continue to challenge them. So it might be in your junior year, you're already taking graduate level courses. But AP courses feed into this cycle of, I want to get through it faster. That's not honors. I mean, honors is intellectual challenge and growth. Gifted and talented should be not isolation, not treating them special. It should be, you're bored with what you're doing here. I want to make sure you continue to be challenged. I want to make sure you're continuing to grow. And it's really more about finding the right level of engagement for each individual child, no matter whether it's top or middle or bottom on a 100-point scale or what have you. That's what I think is really important. And unfortunately, AP, it might have had a role at one point. The irony is, when I was in high school, we didn't have AP, at least not in my high school. It was semi-rural. And now it's already out of its usefulness. So I was never in the curve when AP was useful. Some would say it never was. Sorry for folks who are in New Jersey who run this program.
And the level of stress it creates for these kids.
Absolutely.
It's like they have all these great activities they're doing. They drop the activities to do the AP classes when they're really not that significant.
So that's a great segue. Negative influences on Blueprints for Success.
I would say so.
There are some that are very overt. but then there's some that actually have a negative impact. You work at the counseling center, Dr. Rogers-Fahy. What can take a student off track? What can derail them?
First and foremost, usually like a traumatic event.
Okay.
All of a sudden just happens out of nowhere. Could be a death in the family, someone really close, friend or loved one is shot, killed. I mean, those are the most traumatic ones that just automatically come to my mind. Obviously now with the big, Title IX and sexual assault and domestic violence, those are things that, first and foremost, you should come to school and feel safe.
Right.
So those can definitely keep you from even coming to class or, being able to be successful in any way, because first and foremost you have to be safe. Right,
absolutely. And in previous episode we talked about pressure, we talked about stress, we talked about burnout as well. Those factors we have to acknowledge will play a role, and especially when you take into consideration some of the issues such as a death in the family or some sort of traumatic event. But at the same time, and we talked about and alluded to it as well, that blueprint for success, that ability to overcome, where does that fit into this? Where does that play into the ability to overcome any sort of life event, any sort of negative impact, and be able to say, this is what's going to help me become successful?
Resilience.
The resilience. Yeah.
That's the really, I've heard some really horrific stories, and students really, I've really highly encouraged them to talk to somebody about it, or that I'm here for them if they need me, because they're so focused on getting back into school and trying to do something. My parents would have wanted me to do this, or something in that way. But resilience, these kids are really resilient and really focused on just wanting to be better. It's amazing.
Dr. Brady, you want to add to that?
No, not really. Other than to say, I think that the reality is, unfortunately, we will all have these sorts of challenges in our lives. We'd like to think that they won't happen when we're younger, but oftentimes they do. I guess to add on, the resilience, absolutely. Our own circumstance in our lives, we lost our son 2 years ago, just short of his 9th birthday. Horrific to say the least, but my wife and I had not come through anything like that, obviously, before, but we had others around us who had various other losses, and sharing that and being together. And the reality is it strengthens you unless you let it break you.
Right.
So, this goes back to the beginning of I think, the first episode together, where we talked about the importance of community, communication. Those sorts of things are vital for success as much as they are for survival.
Right.
And in some cases, we should say, at least in my view, survival is success.
That's a good
There are
point.
a lot of times where we have to acknowledge that just getting through is a really big thing.
Right.
And we shouldn't underestimate that.
I think Maya Angelou is famous for saying that she won't be defined by a traumatic event. She will define the trauma.
That's a very good point.
Absolutely.
I was
come back to that quote many times.
Yeah. I was also thinking of Woody Allen, and was it 90% of life is just showing up? And I think that also rings true, although not at the same gravity as Maya Angelou.
But all of that is true, and I think it's important. I also think, and this is something I've been thinking an awful lot about, and I'll share it. I'll work on it with you guys first. In this context, which is the importance of writing our own narrative, borrowing from Maya Angelou, because these things are going to happen to us, and it depends on how we decide to define them. So my freshman year, I did very poorly academically. I could have allowed that to define me. I could have left Cornell, never gone back, never completed a degree, and I could have been very happy.
Right.
As I look back on it, as I share my experience with students now, I talk with them about how I defined the trauma. The trauma there was struggling with my identity of where I was going to go, the fact I was no longer going to be a pre-med student. That had been what I thought I was going to be for 3 or 4 years. Now I talk about that as an important moment to realize it's not everything I am and I was going to be, and so forth. So I write the narrative, not to change history, not to rewrite what actually happened, but to interpret and understand it. And I think that's really important to share that with our own students, that they are in charge of their own narrative. Not to lie, not to misrepresent, not to rewrite, but to contextualize and to interpret what's happened in their lives. And they have the opportunity to interpret it in a positive and affirming and powerful way.
Well, I feel like you're reading the questions right off of my script here, because I was going to ask, as all three of you as panelists have multiple degrees, you're highly educated, and you kind of alluded to it, Dean Brady, and if you'd like to add some more, by all means. What factors led to your success, your definition of success? you feel that that was enough, we can move on to Dr. Rogers-Fahy. But
let them speak first, certainly.
Dr. Rogers-Fahy.
Sure. I actually, my family really laid the groundwork for just how important education was. I'm a first generation from Mexico. My mom had, you know, sort of come here and led the way, and English is her second language. And so and back in those times, you weren't allowed to go to high school if you didn't have, or if you were not an illegal immigrant, right? So she didn't have many of the opportunities that she saw me and my brother being able to sort of grow up with and have. And so constantly in our house, it was, you're going to go to school and you're going to be successful, because I couldn't. I didn't have the opportunity. And so, and then I succeeded. I really loved school. I liked it. And I sought out other people who would sort of mentor me along the way. And we still keep in touch today. And most of them are in California and here in New York. And it's great and wonderful. And professionally, you need those kind of people to sort of look up to and have a community of people, because you really can't do it alone. I don't think, especially going through doctorate school. It's like, you know, when you have to write this paper that takes you, a dissertation that takes you literally 2 years or more, it's definitely, there's times in your life when you want to quit and say, I give up. And those are the people that are like, come on, remember, you can do this. You know, and they believe in you. So it's really important to have that base.
That's great. Dr. Almeida, how about yourself?
Yes, I mean, I agree. I think the idea that I did this on my own is really a fallacy. I've had so many great helpers along the way, from my family, my community, at the university, both at the undergraduate and the graduate level. I've always had a lot of helpers that have really pushed me and who I've sought out and have really sort of given me the right advice. And, you know.
And you've actually developed the Institute for Family Services. Why don't you take a minute or two, just talk to our audience about what it does and what services it offers.
Well, I developed that institute actually after I was working at Carrier Foundation post-PhD, and they were shocking young women as a way to get them out of the facility pretty quickly. And so, since I wasn't a psychiatrist, I was a family therapist, they basically said to me, listen, we'll take your intake, but actually the psychiatrist will make the decision. So they had to leave, and at that point it was 21 days. We had a little more insurance leeway. And so I decided that I'd rather sell hamburgers or do something but work in an institution like that, and that's when I started the Institute for Family Services. So it's really an institute that's driven based on community and family, really sort of moving away from that individual solo model, creating a context where people get a lot of help, a lot of support, lots of mutual sharing among different people, and actually desegregating clients, because at most centers, you know, people with a private practice see people in the upper class. And then people, usually the interns, will see the working class of the Medicaid people. And we don't do that at the center. We see all the families together in a circle.
So it's a much more holistic solution.
And also it desegregates not only the problem, but really class. So people are getting the same level, quality of treatment, regardless of whether they have the ability to pay or they have a Cadillac insurance or not.
And that's something we've talked about in multiple episodes about background, social demographics, and really trying to find ways to bring people the best foreground, best foundation to succeed. So it sounds like it's very important work that you're doing. On that note, I would like to end off the episode with one final thought, is that if there is something you could go back to when you were a student and tell yourself, way back when, what was it, that one key factor that you thought would help you be successful to be the person you are today, or someone else even more successful in your mind? Dr. Brady?
Yeah, I think it would actually be in that freshman year, although I think the experience in the year off in particular was incredibly valuable, would be to reassure myself that I'm okay. Not to borrow the phrase from the old I'm okay, you're okay book, but to say that this is what happens. We go through these times, ride the wave, it's going to be choppy, and things will be all right. And in the end, by the way, that was what reassured me. It was having a mentor and friends around me who were older and had more experience, who said, just hang on, it's going to be okay.
Dr. Rogers-Fahy?
My freshman year was, I had moved away from home for the first time and lived on campus. And when I had taken my first psychology exam and I got a C, I thought I was going to die. Here I am thinking I'm going to major in psychology, right? And also it was the first time I'd ever gotten a C. I mean, it was like, oh my God, I'm not going to make it.
Right.
And I remember calling my mom, like, I think I'm going to have to move back home. I mean, it was just like, in those times you just want to sit down and be like, it's totally okay.
Yeah.
You can get a lot of C's and you're going to graduate and you can do this.
Excellent.
I have a lot of those conversations with our students. It's just a C.
It's just a C.
I don't know what this letter is. I've never seen it before in my life.
Dr. Almeida, yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most compelling part of my narrative is that I came to undergraduate school here from East Africa. And while I was here, Idi Amin threw out all the South Asians. So I was faced with being at a university with no family, no connections. But I had an amazing group of friends that sort of sustained me throughout that. And I always say to people that, you know, it's possible, even under the worst circumstances, it's always possible to have a connection, a circle that will sort of help you get through things.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. Almeida, Dr. Rogers-Fahy, Dr. Brady, thank you so much for your thoughts and perspectives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That'll wrap up our show for today. I'd like to thank our guests for joining us. If you like what you saw in today's episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have any comments, criticisms, or feedback for myself, please reach out to me via email or Twitter. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. And remember, every life is a book. Make yours a bestseller. Have a good night.